Well, it's great to be with you all. My talk this morning is about God's great plans, and I'll be sharing the work of Home For Good Suffolk. Our Bible reading today is just one verse, Romans 8:28, and can be found on page 1135 of your Pew Bibles. So I'm going to be looking at this in conjunction of the Psalm 82, which we heard at the beginning of the service. We'll be exploring this together. So let's look at that verse now. And we know that in all good things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I don't know about you, but reading this in conjunction with our worship song this morning, Goodness of God, suggests that if we love God and commit our lives to God, he brings such many riches and goodness to our lives. That chorus, so he'll be running after us, with our lives laid down. If we surrender to him, that goodness will run after us. And he has a purpose for each and every one of our lives. This can sometimes be hard to believe if we're going through really dark and difficult times, but my experience over the past 20 years tells me that this is 100% true. I was brought up in church as a Catholic, went to Catholic primary school and secondary school, but I can tell you then that church wasn't really, didn't mean anything to me until I came to this church 20-odd years ago. So I did Alpha, reflected on all the worship songs, and I really began to find the meaning of life and came to know Jesus for myself. It was actually a quite dark and difficult time for myself at that point. I was 24. I was newly married to Tim, but that wasn't the dark and difficult bit, Just thought I'd let you know. Still with him now, and we're celebrating 21 years at the end of the month. But the dark and difficult bit was we were desperate to start a family, and that was just something that we really were truly passionate for and desperate for. But despite our greatest efforts, this was not to be successful. We went to something called Spring Harvest, a bit like Focus. So we went to Spring Harvest, and it was there, I think in 2004, maybe, I don't know, that I said, okay, God, I give up, I'm trying to do life in my own strength, and I need you. So sort it out, please. Can you help? help me. So at this point, I surrendered to God, and I said, please just take this from me. Oh, and how he's poured out his goodness, which we've seen in the Bible verse today, with Paul telling us that in all good things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Now powered by the Holy Spirit, little did I know that what purposes God had in store for me. You see, God is able to meet us amidst our suffering and our struggles. And as soon as I made this commitment, my life did change. The children didn't arrive straight away. That was a bit of a long journey. But I know that I was loved by God, and I became part of this family, his family, this church here at St. Augustine's, and I hadn't appreciated how much I would come to need you all over that time. As my faith and my relationships with people and God flourished, I didn't realise just how much God was building me up to manage the devastating news just 2 years later of coping with losing my dad through suicide. My family was in bits, and I was in bits too, but with God and with my church family here and the support they gave me, I made it through. So God's great plans of building me up to cope for that time. His goodness has given me a much stronger support network and foundation just to cope with life in general. I've realised that God's hand was also in my most awesome, amazing, supportive, loving and spirit-filled husband too. God was there even before I realised, and he helped me find him on a beach in the south of France when I was just 16. He is also my rock. So we sang about knowing God as a father and God as a friend. And I don't know about you, but I know that was the best decision I made, to give my life to Christ. Having God with me brings me such great peace and comfort to know that I have a good, good father, a perfect father who is always there through everything. Hey, but 5 years goes on, and my deepest desire for children is still a gaping hole. So much sadness engulfed me every time I kept seeing family members and friends who became pregnant and were having children. And we didn't even get off the starting line. But actually looking back, I was really grateful. There was so much loss in not being able to conceive, but I felt we were protected from further stress and loss of any miscarriages or false hope. God's goodness was to come in abundance, just not just to bless me, but also many families in Suffolk. And I had no idea at this time what God's call and purpose was for me. Some of you will remember we did become successful in having children. In fact, I did have one here, but I think she's still there. She's still there. Excellent. I've got one with me this morning. And Faith and Blake came to join us as a family in 2009. I did tell her this was here. So that was Faith. Faith was 3 and Blake was 20 months. Although we got to the top of the IVF register, we decided we didn't want to take this route. We knew that there was plenty of children out there who needed a loving home, and we sought adoption instead. So both these two children represent the 38,000 new children who come into the UK care system every year. That's 100 children every day. Some will need a temporary home, short-term fostering, while assessment and supports are given, and hopefully there's reunification with birth parents. However, this is not always possible. These babies, children and young people need forever homes. And this is sometimes with a long-term foster parent adopting into a family, adopters, or special guardianship. And that you might hear more recently. It's on the rise. It's family or friend member take on the care of those children. So it's not full adoption, it's called special guardianship order. So, did you know that in the UK, not only of those 38,000 children come in every year, but 103,000 children are looked after. That's a lot of foster carers that are needed. Our eyes were opened by the need of more foster carers, and we went on to foster. We looked after several newborns, and yeah, it was a bit overwhelming when the first one, at 5 days, 5 pounds, turned up in his car seat with his vest that was just oversized, and that was all he had. So there was a quick run to the shops and getting everything we needed. So yeah, we had several children through, and then we had some on respite. So when other foster carers went on holiday, we were a short break, a respite for them as well. So I'm just going to flick back to our psalm that we had at the beginning, which reminds us of God's heart for the vulnerable, the poor, the needy, and the plea for justice. Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. When I read fatherless, I think about those without birth family. They are needy too. As Christians, we are called to follow the example of Jesus and show compassion and love to those in need. Children in care and care experience are amongst the most vulnerable people in our society. They need advocates, they need champions, and they need families. I hope you're still with me. Okay, so here's where we link my life to the work of Home for Good. Okay, this is God's purpose and the good he chose me to deliver here in Suffolk. So in 2013, I learnt about the work of Home for Good, which is a Christian charity who believe that the church has a crucial part to play in finding a home for every child who needs one. They knew at the time that they started there was, I think, 9,000 foster carers needed and 6,000 children in adoption. They thought 15,000. Well, if there was more than 15,000 churches in the UK, if there was one person from each church who would step up and the rest of the church wrap around them, wow, what a difference we can make to these children. So we often think of, when we think of children in care, our minds jump quickly to babies and toddlers and young children. Yet over the last decade, we've seen an increase in numbers of children between 10 and 17 entering the care system too. And there's now something called supportive lodgings that Home for Good are encouraging and supporting. It's sort of a step down from fostering, but they have a mentor, and as long as you've got a spare room in your house, it's not as onerous as fostering. So supported lodgings is also something that's needed. This age group now make up the majority of the children in care. We also know that older children are more likely to experience multiple losses and moves within a year than younger children in care too. But I'm sure you'll agree that every child and young person matter. Every child and young person has worth and value, and every child and young person deserves to live and grow in a stable environment where they can be loved and cared for and supported. So as an adoptive parent, a foster carer and a Christian, when I found out about Home for Good, I thought, I felt compelled. God's got this finger on me and I wanted to get involved. I wanted to make an impact on the lives of children in Suffolk. And in 2014, with the help of other Christians, carers, I set up what was called Home for Good Suffolk. So that's the next one, Sarah. We share the same vision as passion as the national charity Home for Good, but since 2016 we've been operating independently under the charity of Transforming Futures Suffolk. This year we're celebrating, as Sarah said, 10 years, and oh how God has continued to bless the work across this county. So Home for Good Suffolk is very unique. I think we're one of 3 local movements now connected with Home for Good. And yeah, here's the 2 aims that we have. So we want to find more homes for babies, children and young people who need them. You heard about the statistics earlier and the need, so we want you to spread the word of the need. We want to raise awareness, and that's what we do by talking in churches. I'm off to Colchester Road Baptist Church next Sunday. So we want to get in and share what this need is. Most people switch off once they hear fostering and adoption and think, that's nothing to do with me, I can't do that. But I want to tell you that everyone can help, and this church is doing amazing stuff too. In 1 Corinthians 12, 24 to 25, Paul writes about the body as a unit made through many parts, and although all its parts are many, it becomes one body. In the same way, the churches can play their part in doing many different things, which I'm going to go on to share later. So our other aim is to connect with and support all foster carers, adopters and special guardians who live in Suffolk. And this basically means we provide many regular activities and holiday activities where families can meet up. I'm going to Setford Forest tomorrow with 37 families, over 70 children. And we're providing them lunch. It's all good. It's all good. Some are going to go ape, and some will do archery, and some will enjoy the play park. I was at Clip and Climb yesterday with 45 children, some climbing and some in the soft play. Logistical nightmare, both of them, but it's all worked, and the families are so grateful for the opportunities to meet together. I know from personal experience the value of meeting others who have been through the same things and experience similar things in bringing up the children. Parenting is tricky anyway, I think most people will agree, but parenting children who have experienced trauma and abuse just adds another layer of complexity on top of that. But here is a quote from one of our parents to let you know how they feel about us. Home for Good has given me and my family a community of friends that support and understand us. My daughter loves having friends like her, and I love meeting grown-ups with the same struggles and can laugh at the same moment, same moments of joy with us. It can be lonely being a parent to a child with trauma, but having a group of people that understand, don't judge, can offer tips and giggles really does help. So thanks to all you do. That's just one of many who share that sort of feeling of the impact that we're having on their lives. Being used by God in this way is a huge privilege. We know God's heart, but he needs us to be involved too. It says in 1 Corinthians 3:9, for we are God's co-workers in God's service. He might have these great plans, but he needs us to help carry them out. We are his workers. Year on year, we're meeting and supporting more families. And in the past year, this year, we will have reached beyond 250 different families across Suffolk. So we survive through local giving. So we are not funded by national. We are completely separate. So any giving to national doesn't come to us. So just to throw that one out there. we look for local giving and grants, which have allowed us to actually employ 3 part-time workers, and we love to be able to employ a 4th. So we sort of separate up Suffolk according to regions to work and support in. And we have a whole host of volunteers as well who help us. And one of those volunteers is sitting here. I'm going to give him a microphone, ask him to come this way, is Pete. Now, Pete has taken over the hosting of the foster group that meet here twice a month.
Yep.
Tell us your experience.
Well, I can't say I came rushing to Mel to have.
Was a bit reluctant at first.
Short story is Mel was asking week after week for someone to help her out with the group that meets here every twice a month. And I made the mistake after taking a little bit of pity on my sister about what it entailed.
You thought it was a mistake.
And then she hunted me down. But I have to say, so it's been about a year now, Mel, I think. And I host it a couple of times a month, this group. Do you know, in the Bible it tells us that, and teaches us we can't outgive God. And I've come to witness that, because though I was reticent to do it, it's not my thing. I love God, I'm a Christian. I believe in that we should help each other wherever we can. But you know, I'm also of the world, and sometimes we're a bit slow in coming forward in things that maybe don't seem to suit us. But the admiration I've found in spending time with these people is beyond, I can't even suggest how large that is in my heart. I mean, we all know the social problems we have in this country and through the world probably, with unwanted children. And I see this group, the giving that they give to these children, the giving of new life to these tiny little babies, sometimes just a few days old, and they take over and foster them, the men and women, both mums and dads, and they foster them sometimes for up to 2 years and then have to give them over when it comes to adoption. And each time to them it's a trauma and breaks their hearts. Some are Christians, some are not. Some are Christians and don't know they are. So I just have fallen for them, and you know, I come away from there being so blessed by being part of this, that God does outgive us all, even us who come with our feet heavy laden to help. So that comes to one of the things that we do need is someone else to help out with this in this group. Reason being is not because I don't want to do it all the time, but there'll be times when I'm not able to do it, or something happens, and the last thing I would want is for this group to be let down with no one hosting them. So I'd really appreciate if someone would like to share that this month, these 2 a month, with me. If you do, then just come and give us a chat or speak to Mel.
Thank you. Could you put that back? Sure. So Pete actually said, well, could they just use the building and come? You know, do they need someone hosting? And I said, not really, but if we want to use Home for Good as a way of a great witness, if we want to be sharing what we're doing here and welcome them into the church, we need to be in that group with them. So that's one of the ways that we can help witness to those foster carers. And I learned I didn't learn, but I was reminded at Focus just a few weeks ago that these children need Jesus. The lives that were transformed and the stories that were given on stage was many of their hurt and trauma in childhood. And actually, they were saying how much they'd gained from knowing Jesus. So if we can help bring those children to knowing Jesus, maybe some of their early trauma can be healed, and they can have that rock, they can have that Jesus, they can have that perfect Father to see them through their lives. So that's why I want churches involved with the running of groups and activities. It's a great mission for us and witness as a church. And I'll just share with you what happened at Easter, because that was another great way churches can be involved. We as a church, we weren't asked, and that was the right thing, because this church does other things. But we went out to other churches in Suffolk, and we said, we're having 12 Easter activities. We're going to see over 300-ish, maybe, children throughout the Easter holidays. We'd love to bless them with an Easter egg. So we got 14 different churches involved, and we had an abundance of Easter eggs. There was more than enough. In fact, we gave the rest to other local organisations that supported the needs of families, children homes and food banks and things like that, because we had more than we needed. But that was the first time we'd done it, and we were completely blessed by the impact that the church had on that. So we want to do more of that. We want to be finding little things that everybody can do to play their part, to bless these families and bless these children. And I just want to sort of take that moment now to thank this church. This church has been involved with Home for Good because of me. And I know that I'm moving on next year, and I'd love you to still be involved with Home for Good. There'll be a new coordinator for this area, which I will hand you on to. But this church provides so much for us. It gives financially, annually, through some tithing. They let us use their buildings for adult meals, Christmas parties, anything we need, we are able to use a building. Some of you give personally, some of you, tell people about us. So I just want to thank you for all you have been doing. And thank you, Rachel. Rachel, I nabbed. Not only is this treasurer, I'm treasurer for this church, she's treasurer for Home For Good Suffolk too, and she does an amazing job. So I have been roping people in. There are some treasurer positions available and coming up too. So there is always something that people can get involved with. So I just want to, I think I'd better finish. I've got 2 questions to finish. One of those, if we go back to right at the beginning and look at that Romans 8:28, we see that God calls us for his purpose. So my question is, for what purpose and good has God chosen for you? Okay? You might not know it yet. And you might think, oh, I haven't got a purpose. Oh. But actually look at it, pray in, think about, listen, and go for it. Because I think it was Tim that pushed me to start Home For Good Suffolk. But sometimes we've just got to go for it. And God will provide for us. God will give us all we needed. I was in childcare and teaching. I have no idea about running a charity and event organising and stuff, and speaking. It's not my chosen, not to big groups. I like speaking. So God will give us what we need for the purpose he has chosen us for. And the other question is, how might you be able to support the work of Home For Good going forward? Could you pray? We have seasonal prayer cards. These are at the back. This is summer one. I know we're coming to the end of summer, but there's still things on there that we'd love you to help pray for. Continued funding. We've got a few funding bids in at the moment, and we'd love for those to be successful. And peace for our families, particularly as they struggle with challenges of behaviour and mental health and education provision. And there will be a new one coming out for autumn, and it will be about thinking about them as starting school and sort of getting back into school. Often relationships are quite hard for our children, and change is hard, and having new teachers to then build new relationships with, that can be quite tricky too. If you want one of these, take one from the back. I will make sure it gets to the office every season, and then they can post it onto the Facebook group here at church, so you can have some of those. So everyone can pray, okay? What else can we do? Is there another one? Excellent. So we can volunteer. So you might like to help Pete with the running of the group. You might want to come and help at a different activity. You might want to be the link person that we call a champion here at St Augustine's. I'm the champion here at the moment, and I'm gone, sort of, half gone. So I could do with another link person who we coordinate and link with for each church. We like to have a champion in each church. So we'd love a new champion for this church. And of course, if you want to, you can support us financially. The church hopefully will continue that. And personally, if you want to, there is some leaflets at the back, and that QR code should take you to our giving for Transforming Futures Suffolk, Home For Good Suffolk, not Home For Good, because otherwise we don't see it locally. So if you can support us in that way, that will be amazing. And is there something else you can do? Okay, open your door. If you can continue to open your church building for us, that would be amazing. But there might be others here who want to explore fostering adoption or supportive lodgings. Come to us and we'll have coffee and we'll chat. It might be someone that you know through work that is thinking about adoption or fostering or supportive lodgings. Have those communications with people. Now you know the need. If conversations come up, speak of Home for Good Suffolk and let them know. It might be for your work, you meet families, we can provide you with leaflets and we can get you signed up to our professionals mailing list as well. So please help us open the door to these children and families. Is there anything else on there? No, I think that's it. Excellent. So yeah, just thinking of going ahead, what can you do to help us in that? There are some annual reports at the back, just to give you a flavour a bit more. And there is also a little information sheet that you can sign up to the prayers as well. I think I've said enough.
I just wanted everybody to spend some time in prayer, just thinking over those things that we've been asked to open our hearts to. We don't want to suddenly go off for lunch and forget that you're trying to make packed lunch for however many people it is tomorrow, this afternoon.
150.
But if we have a time where we think, is there something that we can do as individuals, as part of this church? What is God saying to us? Is the Holy Spirit prodding us now? Maybe with time or money, with sitting on a Friday morning, making cups of coffee and handing out biscuits, which seems so simple, but actually makes such a difference to those families and makes a difference to the person giving out those coffees too. The relationships that are built, the stories that are told. There's such a call on our time, but is this the thing that God is asking us to do? We make our own plans, but what is God's plan for us today? We thank you that, Lord, that you've been with Mel over this journey of 20 odd years with Tim. And we thank you for their family. We thank you for Faith and Blake too. And we just thank you that you were there showing them your plans that they had no idea of, but you were there with them as they went on this journey. And 20 odd years ago, they probably, if you'd have told them what the plan was, they'd have run the other way. So thank you for holding their hands and being with this journey. And Lord, prod us this week, remind us of this talk. Let us see where we can go with Home for Good in this next season. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.